Question 3, please.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'll take questions 3, 4, and 5 together.
Yes, please.
Thank you. The UN Human Rights Council appointed a fact-finding mission in March last year. This fact-finding mission on Myanmar published its full report on the 18th of September. This report contained harrowing accounts of brutal and shocking atrocities committed in the Rakhine State that led to an outflow of refugees to Bangladesh. I just returned from New York yesterday, and on the 29th of September, we had an informal ASEAN foreign ministers meeting. And in fact, because this topic was so sensitive, we convened a smaller group consisting of only the ministers. We expressed our grave concern with these alleged acts of violence that have led to loss of life, injuries, destructions of homes, and displacement of large numbers of people. And to be brutally honest, this is a man-made humanitarian disaster, and something which should not be happening in this day and age. The foreign ministers urged the Myanmar government that since the Myanmar government has appointed an independent commission of inquiry, that this independent commission of inquiry should be given a full mandate to investigate and to hold all those responsible fully accountable. We also called on both Myanmar and Bangladesh, which have in fact signed an agreement in November last year that should provide for the voluntary, safe and dignified return of refugees. But to date, not a single refugee has returned under the aegis of that agreement. So we emphasize that a key milestone now must surely be the start or the commencement of a repatriation of refugees to Myanmar. So we're going to have to wait and see and hope that this will begin shortly. We also urge the government of Myanmar to step up its implementation of all the recommendations of the Kofi Annan Advisory Commission on Rakhine State, because the root causes of this conflict need to be addressed. And a conducive environment needs to be created so that all affected communities can rebuild their lives. You need circumstances in which there are opportunities for reconciliation, for assurances of justice and equality, and ultimately for better prospects for all communities. Otherwise, this long-term intercommunal complex situation will fester. And if this festers, it will create more opportunities for extremism and ultimately terrorism, which will not respect boundaries and will represent a clear and present threat throughout Southeast Asia and beyond. In the meantime, the refugees in Bangladesh deserve and need assistance. Members will recall that, in fact, last year we had sent a consignment of assistance to the refugees in Bangladesh. Depending on assessment of their future needs, we may have to do so again. In the meantime, I know that the private sector and people sector organizations within Singapore are also sending appropriate assistance to Bangladesh. I want to emphasize that ultimately the responsibility for resolving this must lie with the government of Myanmar, and responsibility that we will hold them to account, and they do need to do the right thing, and to do the right thing for all the vulnerable, defenseless and innocent victims. It's also a salutary warning to all of us in Southeast Asia. Race, language and religion are live issues and can always be exploited for short-term political gains, but unfair share of the burden and of the injuries are sustained by defenseless people. Thank you.
Mr. Chris D'Souza.
Sir, I would like to thank the Minister for his insightful answer. This is a catastrophic human tragedy. Following the UN fact-finding mission report in September of this year, the UN Human Rights Council took the additional step of deciding to set up a team to investigate further alleged atrocities. May I ask what Singapore's position is on the setting up of this team, and what is ASEAN's perspective of the alleged atrocities?
Singapore is not currently a council member on the UN Human Rights Council, so these decisions we are not party to. The unfortunate fact is that the Myanmar government does not recognize or accept the decisions, in particular with respect to this particular situation. So for instance, the fact-finding mission did not have any cooperation from Myanmar. So all the accounts which are contained in the report are based on interviews conducted with refugees outside Myanmar. My approach to this is to be practical, and that's why we focused on the fact that Myanmar herself has appointed an independent commission of inquiry. In this independent commission are two foreigners, one a Filipino ambassador and another one from Japan. Both of them have reputations for being fiercely independent. So as of now, we are waiting for the independent commission to begin its work, submit its reports, and we'll listen with great interest, particularly to the two independent members of that commission. I think we have to be practical, and we have to look for every opportunity in which not to inflame the situation, but nevertheless to hold people who are responsible fully accountable. So let's wait and see.
Mr. Lewison.
So I thank Minister for the reply. I think in the reply you said that you were doing an assessment on the ground to see whether to send a second consignment to Bangladesh. But can I just check when this assessment will be completed? I understand the US has done the assessment, and just last week they announced that they will double the aid to the refugees in Bangladesh and Myanmar. And I just want to, I've been on the ground in the refugee camps in Bangladesh. I've seen what conditions they're living in. I've heard the stories firsthand of how much they've suffered, seen children with bullet wounds and how they've been scarred for life. And the people there really do need help. And I understand there have been a lot of landslides recently as well. So I'm really hopeful that Singapore will provide this second consignment of humanitarian aid. And secondly, there's the second part of my PQ is also whether we will increase our financial contributions to the UNHCR so that refugees around the world we can help them rebuild their lives.
Well, the answer to the first question is that we are in touch with the Bangladesh government. And I mean, again, at the UN meetings last week. In fact, there were several side meetings as well. And my sense is, I mean, there are commitments for additional humanitarian assistance by various countries, including, as you quite rightly said, the United States. But my concern goes beyond just humanitarian assistance. You actually need a long-term solution. And a long-term solution is a political solution. In addition to that, you also want to have deterrence for future bouts of violence. And that's why having independent commissions of inquiry, and that's why holding people accountable is important. Your second question on the support, I think, for the High Commission for Refugees. We are one of the countries that makes voluntary contributions, and we have raised our contributions last year. But I don't want to, overinflate the importance of that. We will do our part, and we will work with the High Commission for Refugees.
Dr. Intan.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Well, I understand that we need time to let the independent commission and inquiry to take place. But beyond that, Singapore as ASEAN chair, what else can we do?
I think there was related to that question, I think Christopher also had asked, is there force of law? Can Myanmar be compelled? And the short answer to that, as far as ASEAN is concerned, is no. But what we can do through moral suasion, through persuasion, through transparency, and keeping this on the agenda, and also telling the Myanmar government that we want and hope for a long-term viable good outcome, and ASEAN stands ready to help. Specifically, what we said last week to Myanmar was that we expect the voluntary repatriation to begin soon, and ASEAN stands ready to help to facilitate that in any way possible. But I think members also need to understand ASEAN is an association that makes decisions by consensus. And once you understand that every decision requires consensus, it effectively means every single country has a veto. So that acts as a constraint to the legal options available. And as I said, in any case, ultimately the solution, the long-term solution for this is a political solution. So, and politics must involve discussion, disagreement, dispute resolution if need be, and hoping that in the long run, cool heads will prevail and people will do the right thing. Compulsion, tempting as it is, usually almost never works in this sort of situations.
Ms. Denise Poor.
Minister, I totally understand that a long-term political solution is needed, but while the rest of the world debate and give advice and coax and persuade and through moral suasion, is there something that Singapore or Singaporeans can do more? I know that it's probably controversial if we want to use taxpayers' money to do more, but can government, the MCCY or MOE, organize have local efforts so that we can actually raise funds and people can contribute beyond for a cause that's bigger than themselves. And I thought this would be a great chance for us to really look beyond Singapore, what we're blessed with, and really look at how we can actually contribute to other, what you call disasters in the world.
I thank the member for that supplementary question. Actually, Singaporeans have been, and it's not just the government. I mean, we typically set aside seed funding, but I think you may be aware that there has been fundraising, and I think more than $1 million actually have been conveyed. And there's probably a lot more that we are not even aware of. Singaporeans do care, and they do express their care. And whilst in the totality of it, we are probably a drop in the ocean. But I just wanted to commend that the attitude that you have always espoused, in fact, is being practiced. And I would expect that more assistance will flow. And we'll work together with the people sector on this. As I said, really this sort of situation should not be happening in this day and age. But it is a stark reminder that we do not live in a perfect world. But let's not make things worse. That's why I don't take an unnecessarily provocative and combative approach to this. Second, have sufficient level of transparency and accountability. Third, address humanitarian assistance in the short term. And fourth, try to promote a longer-term political solution. But again, for those of you who go back in history, this problem has been there for for more than 200 years. It's not something that will be resolved even in 200 days. So you do need a sense of realism and without giving up on hope and without giving up that sense of solidarity with fellow human beings. So we will continue to do our best.